Good morning, and welcome to When Things Aren't Going Well. This show is all about your mental wellness and how you can help yourself navigate the daily highway of life. Our show is brought to you by Family Services, a United Way partner agency serving the Siouxland community. Our topic today is A Dad's Guide to Mental Wellness. This is in celebration of Father's Day. And joining me today from Family Services is Chief Operating Officer Brenda Geisinger and clinical therapist Amy Small. Good morning, ladies.
Good morning.
Okay, you guys, you had your days. You had Mother's Day. Now it's come up on Father's Day. And I definitely think it's one of these days where, what are dads? What's going on? You look at Father's Day and you could give your dad another tie or a new set of barbecue tools. Better yet, you can ask him a question that might make a real difference in his health and happiness. How you really doing, Dad? Millions of men in the United States are dealing with mood and mental health disorders such as anxiety, depression, eating disorders, serious mental illness. More than 6 million men alone have depression, according to the National Institute of Mental Health, yet men are less likely than women to seek help for depression and stressful life events. These are kind of the things that, ladies, I'm sure you're not new to. So with that, why don't we start off with Amy and Brenda kind of like sharing with us. Let's frame this. Let's talk about anxiety and depression in men.
I think a lot of times men don't recognize that they're struggling or are fearful of acknowledging that they're struggling. They're kind of conditioned to buck it up or not acknowledge that they're having feelings, don't want to be vulnerable or put themselves out there, and so they really struggle. And then to go one step further and ask for help is also difficult for a lot of men.
And I agree with both of you. My dad is my person. He is my rock. I call him when I'm stressed, when I'm happy, when I'm nervous, when I think I can't do it anymore. And he is that consistent person that always gives me calm advice when I'm being a little bit dramatic. And, your question really made me think because you're right. He can be experiencing some of the same things that I'm experiencing, but it's my dad. So I don't look at it that way.
Well, dads are supposed to be strong all the time, evoke that confidence. So, if you're worried about your dad, that he might be struggling, here's some things that you can look for. Most people think that depression is just sadness and anxiety, or it's just a form of worry. But those are hardly the only symptoms. In fact, the signs of depression and anxiety disorders in men are often more subtle. Some of these less obvious signs include, and let's talk about them. Let's start with anger and aggression.
So anger is, and that's a great one to bring up. It's a thing that hides or covers up some other emotions that maybe feel a little bit less or feel a little bit more vulnerable, especially when you think of men, because like you guys both said, they're conditioned to be, I'm strong, I don't have, I've got everything together, I'm gonna keep the ship afloat, so to speak. So anger can hide a lot of things that you're talking about: irritability, sadness, annoyance, frustration, and it's easier sometimes for us to be angry, both males and females. It's easier to let somebody see that we're angry than we're feeling vulnerable or frustrated or don't know what the answer is.
I think a lot of times men are also conditioned or believe they have to have solutions. And when you're not feeling well or have depression, and for men, it may be, why can't I solve this? Why can't I get on top of things? What's the answer or the fix? And they get angry. What's wrong? Why is this such a problem for me? And so again, like Amy said, it can kind of mask what's really going on underneath.
If we don't get to the full scale anger, another symptom is irritability. Mm-hmm. And that's along the same lines, a lack of patience, being short, not the right answers to really simple questions. So something's going on right there. How about changes in energy or appetite?
You can eat too much or not eat enough, want to sleep more, or you're having problems sleeping, your routine enough hours. All those can be really significant signs. With the heat, sometimes people aren't hungry, but if it's an ongoing thing, you might want to pause and say, really, what is going on?
And when I think, this kind of brought me to my headspace, a little bit different headspace. It's, are you checking out? You know, if you're used to having family dinners together or breakfast together, are you still showing up for those things, or are you checking out and being like, I'm going to go eat in front of the couch, or I'm going to eat in the shed, or I'm going to pick something up on the way from work? And if those things are starting to happen too, and it's different from the way you've normally done it, it's a sign, hey, I've got something going on here.
You know, let's sign up. First of all, before we go on, I'm Art Silva, and joining me today on When Things Aren't Going Well is Amy Small, clinical therapist from Boys and Girls Home, and Chief Operating Officer Brenda Geisinger. And we're talking about dad's mental wellness. Another symptom that we're looking at is restlessness, and that's something very subtle, but restlessness in men.
Not wanting, to sit, and you're constantly trying to find things to occupy yourself. And it can be silly things or really serious things, but you just always feel like I got to go do something, or I have to go fix this, project, and never really maybe getting anything done because you're just constantly moving from project to project, or thinking of all the to-dos I have to do, and your mind just kind of keeps going in circles. And it's a lack of focus.
Here's a pretty common one. You hear it a lot, is an increased use of drugs and alcohol. We saw a lot of this during COVID-19 as a potential solution to a lot of the isolationism. You want to comment on use of drugs or alcohol, excessive use?
So I think it can be considered a coping skill, right? But not all coping skills are healthy. And I think that's what we have to focus on. Are we using a healthy coping skill or one that is not healthy? The other thing is, what are you trying to avoid with whatever's going on, whether it's restlessness or drugs or alcohol? Because that thing is still going to be there when you're done running around, or you're done drinking, or you're coming down off that high. It's still going to be there. So it's temporary solutions, and it makes whatever you're trying to avoid feel even more overwhelming because it doesn't go away.
Interesting. It's sometimes these problems they're demons, and I don't want to promote that they're easily solved, because they're not. Mm-hmm. They're usually underlying issues that support this, and a good example is just the stress in every day. On top of that, where do you get your outlet? Where do you go for your relief? Are you engaging in risky activities? I've seen that as a subtle sign of when men start doing things, at least, hey, what are you doing that for? And there's a risk to it, and you kind of think about the rest of the obligations you have and responsibility you have. That's out of character. Have you seen any of that?
Yeah, and I think with that, it's similar to avoidance. It's let's turn the attention to a different direction. So I'm doing this risky behavior, so whatever I don't want to talk about or whatever I don't want to deal with, it's going to be hidden because I'm deciding to go do parachuting or whatever I'm going to do.
Hey, we see that. That's what happens.
Yeah.
I don't want to jump out of a plane. What the heck?
Hey, I know that there's safe ways to do that, but to me, if it's not something you're used to doing, it's probably a little bit more risky than, going for a walk or jumping off the diving board, I guess.
I'm still hung up on the why. Why? Then also sudden changes in behavior, another symptom that you notice, hey, dad never did this before. All of a sudden, dad is doing things a little differently. And these are all subtle changes, but they all add up in terms of something's going on inside of there. So second half of the show, we're going to talk about some of the ways we can help our dads get through the mental stress. You don't always have to be strong. Sometimes, it's a weakness to think that you're strong and you can do everything and you're bulletproof. Sometimes you need help. So we're coming up on our break, and we're dealing with dad's mental wellness since it's Father's Day, in honor of all the dads out there. So we're going to be right back here after a short pause for the cause, so please don't change that dial. We'll be right back here when things aren't going well. Welcome back, When Things Aren't Going Well. Our topic today is a dad's guide to mental wellness. And during the first half of our show, we identified symptoms of anxiety and depression in men. This half of the show, we're going to look at ways to support your dad's mental wellness. But before we go there, let's just talk about mental wellness and men in general. And I think that's really important. Amy, do you want to take that?
So I think when we talk about mental wellness, while I think there's been a shift in a positive direction, there's always been this stigma about, oh, you're going in to see a therapist or a counselor. What's wrong with you? And I think when we look at men, it's even compounded because we've, as a society, and I know that sounds pretty dramatic, but as a society, it's always been, women go to therapy, not men. And so I think that also can be a real struggle or a barrier for someone to go and get help because they're already pre-programmed like, that isn't for me, that's only for females. So kind of getting through that in your own head before reaching out for help can be a big step just in itself.
That's a real good point. And what do you say when you go up? Things are going wrong with Dad. How do you approach this, or how can we do things that can help our dad's mental wellness? And let's talk about a couple of strategies. And one is something you mentioned earlier, Amy, and that's show up. When you come by and have a dinner or something, don't exclude yourself.
Yeah, showing up, even if you don't feel like it, because when you're starting to feel depressed or having some anxiety or things like that, we tend to isolate and just go away. And what research tells us, that's exactly the opposite of what you should be doing. When you're starting to have some of those depressive symptoms, the top 3 things that research supports that can be helpful is healthy eating patterns, consistent sleep patterns, and increase in physical activity. And when I say physical activity, it doesn't mean that you have to go to the gym. It could be, I'm present with my family. Yep, I'm going for a walk. It can be standing up in the middle of the day and putting your hands above the air. I just went to a training and it really works. Put your hands up above the air, and that just is different for your circulation, and it can keep you moving a little bit more. So it doesn't have to be 45 minutes on the Stairmaster. It can be something that seems a little bit more obtainable for you.
That isolation, especially as you get older, is important. And if you can't make it there to pay a visit, you can call, you can text. There's a lot of things you can do to stay in touch. So that's one thing. Show up. 2, let's look at let's choose the right time and place when you're ready to talk to your dad about his move and mental health. Pick a time and a place where you can have that type of conversation one-on-one. What do you say about that, Brenda?
I think also a lot of times we don't acknowledge and just tell our fathers or men that we appreciate them or we love them. When you first start a relationship with, someone, you're all googly-eyed and, oh, I love you and I like when you do this. But later on, you kind of forget those things and you focus on the annoying things. Why didn't you do this? Or you got to do this. And everybody likes to be appreciated. And I think more often than not, we forget to tell men, you look really nice today, or I really appreciate you bringing in the groceries for me, or all those little things. And men want to hear that too. And so even those significant little comments can help that conversation then begin, because there's a sense of trust again.
Once you get to that situation, how important is it to be direct?
So I am a big fan of being direct, but I also am a big fan of making sure that when you're direct, you're not hurting somebody's heart. So there's difference of being factual information, this is what I'm seeing, and using I statements, not in a blaming way. But then factual information is different of, you're not doing this, or you are making me feel this way. It's more of, I'm noticing that there's been a change in whatever you've noticed the change in. So it takes the pressure off the person, and you're not, it doesn't put them in defensive mode right away.
Well, to that end, it's important, I guess, to build an alliance so that that your father knows that you're there to help, and that you're not there to critique or take it away. So that's a good suggestion, Amy. That's really good.
And when you think about it, it's kind of a role reversal, right? Because your dad has been the one that has been giving you advice and suggestions and all those things as you've grown up. And when it gets to that point where, dad's looking like he's kind of having a hard time, it can be even stressful for you to have that, okay, now I have to have this talk with my dad, who is this, person I look up to, and that's normally him that does it to me. So it can be a little transition phase too in life, which can be, transitions are hard. So
Another suggestion when you notice some symptoms is offer to help in in specific ways. If your dad seems stressed, say I'll take you to the doctor's office or I'll cut the lawn for you, but you can be more specific in what you can do to help. Because part of the problem is men have a hard time asking. And I think sometimes, I'll speak for myself, I'm supposed to be doing this, but you have a hard time asking. And so that could be part of the problem. Let's get to therapy because that's our business. And many men think therapy means lying on the couch, sharing their most intimate, private thoughts. But many types of modern therapy, and I know you ladies are familiar with this, are based around finding practical solutions to everyday problems. So if you've been to therapy, if you have a friend or a family member who has benefited from that experience should be shared. Your thoughts?
Yeah, and I think it's really important if you've made the step that, I need to go in and see a therapist, that you're direct with that therapist and say, this is what I'm looking for. I want solution-focused methods to how I can problem solve. Or I'm struggling with problem solving. Whatever it is, so that they know and are going for the direction that you want them to go towards. Because if you don't tell them, we don't know, and so that's really important for that communication.
I think it's about looking for solutions, like Amy said. Men want solutions. They're problem solvers, and they like facts. And it's not just sitting in an office over coffee and chit-chatting. It has a purpose, and there is a goal. And you can work on that with a professional and say, this is what I'm looking for, and come up with a plan together and start working on it.
I think another part of that, when people first hear the word therapy, they think, oh, I'm going to be in this for years and years and years. But that's not always the case. If you're having an acute issue going on, you can come in and maybe see someone 4, 5, 6 times and get the skills that you need to use in your everyday life. So it could be short term. You might need more than that. But I really would like to see a shift in people's thinking where it's not always forever. I tell everybody the first day that I meet them when they come into my office, my job is to put myself out of business. And what I mean by that is I want to teach them the skills that they need so that they don't need me anymore. And so I think if we look at it that way, it also kind of gets rid of some of the anxiety because it's not forever.
Well, we've had a great discussion this morning. And I think it's important as we sum this up is to point out that getting help is a sign of strength. We have to battle this stigma, this old-fashioned advice that, you can't do that. So I think we've talked about that. I think it's important. What's real important, that it's okay. That it's okay to find some help. Great professionals in the community that can help in this area. And there's no way to go through life this way. Learn how to best deal with this. So I appreciate your comments on that. Now, what are you guys going to be doing come Sunday? Do you have anybody that Amy, do you?
Well, my dad is my person, so we will probably be at the campground down at Lazy H and on the beach, and we'll probably be grilling something. My mom got a Blackstone, so we'll probably be, I always think that we're going to be doing what they do on the
hibachi.
Yeah, hibachis. It doesn't look like that. We're not that skilled yet, but I'm hoping that gets used.
Well, that's going to be, sounds like you're ready for it to go, so all the best. We're coming up on the end of our show, and every week we end our show with a little humor, because humor is good medicine for the soul. So there's a science teacher. She asked a student, when is the boiling point reached? And the science student responded, when my dad sees my report card. Thank you, Brenda. Thank you, Amy. And also to our listening audience for joining us this morning. A shout out to all dads, especially the new dads. And if you have any questions or comments, or would like to suggest a topic or request a shout out, please call Family Services at 293-4900 and ask for Mary. All episodes are archived on the Family Services webpage and under the programming tab on the KSCJ website. When things aren't going, we'll be back next Saturday morning at 7 o'clock right here on KSCJ 1360 94.9. And our topic will be COVID-19 anxiety and re-entry into the community. Have a great week. May the sun shine on you.